Well, today is Back to Church Sunday. I want to welcome all of you to this day, Back to Church Sunday. And today we're going to start a new three-part series titled Hope Happens Here. That's the theme of this year's Back to Church Sunday all over the country, as I said. And so we're starting this series, Hope Happens Here. And as you consider that, hope happens here, what does that mean? What does hope happens here mean? I think it's a reminder that when we say hope happens here, we're not saying exclusively here. We're not saying this is the only place you can find hope. There are other places. By that I mean other churches, other places where the gospel is proclaimed, where you can find hope because the church is a place where we can meet God. God designed it that way. He designed it that way. Not the only place. We can meet God at home. We can meet God in our own time of devotion, our own time of prayer. But God designed specifically our assemblies, our gatherings together to be a place where we worship God, where we encourage each other, and where we can find hope. So hope, it happens here because God has stewarded the message of hope in the church. The true message of hope, real hope, lasting hope, is stewarded in the church. And so this is why we're calling this Hope Happens Here. And that's important because really the basis of the Christian faith is hope, an audacious hope that God is at work in our lives. I have hope that God is at work in my life. I have hope that things don't have to remain tomorrow the way they are today if they're not, if I'm not doing well today. A hope that broken things can be mended, and a hope that we are loved by our Creator. So maybe this morning you've come or you're watching online in need of hope. Maybe the weight of the world is more than you can bear, or maybe you've come today because you feel there's nowhere else to turn. Maybe you're listening, you're watching us online, or you're listening to a podcast later, and you feel like you don't have anywhere else to turn. And I just want to reiterate, hope happens here. Hope happens where we meet God, because God is a giver of hope. Today's message is titled Hope for a Healthy Soul. Hope for a healthy soul. Last week, I spoke about the only way we can find rest for our souls, and that is in Jesus, who said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." He spoke about having rest for our souls. And when our souls are at rest, we're content, we're joyful, and we're healthy. So next week, I'm going to talk to you about hope for a renewed mind, and then we'll finish this short three-part series with hope for a changed life. Those are working titles. Those may change. Today's title is Hope for a Healthy Soul, and that changed from last night to this morning. So, but let me open by asking you this question: how many of you? Let me see by a show of hands. How many of you have pets? Raise your hand if you have a pet. Oh, that's a lot of you, okay? More specifically, how many of you have a dog or dogs for pets? Again, that's probably all of you that raised your hand the first time. Okay, I don't know if that's a commentary on cats or not, but I'm not going to touch that. I'm not a cat person. I'm not going to touch that. We love our pets, don't we? I mean, dogs specifically are treated differently in every culture. In our country, we have dogs as pets. We talk to them as if they understand words. You do that, right? As if they understand words. We take them to the vet when they're sick or simply to get their annual shots. We call our dogs our children. Some people do, I don't. Our children, our grandchildren, our fur babies. In a lot of cases, we treat dogs like people. But that's not the case everywhere. In other cultures, people eat dogs. Just as a extreme contrast, Jason and Sarah Morris are missionaries to Vietnam. They were here earlier this summer. Some of you were here when they visited us on July 4th, in fact. July 4th weekend. And the very first time we met them several years ago, Jason shared with us about how he had to, when they first went to Vietnam, he had to adjust to the idea that people eat dogs. Uh, that sounds bad, right? Canines. I don't know how to make it sound better, but it's bad. They do that in Vietnam. In fact, he showed us a picture of a market that sells dog meat. And, I'm not going to describe it because it's pretty sad. But so I'm just saying, look, not everybody treats dogs the way we do. It's very different. Well, so I want us to, and I say that because of something that Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 9:4. I want us to go to Ecclesiastes 9:4. And here's what he writes. Anyone who is among the living has hope. We're talking about hope. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. What does that mean? Well, as I said, it's believed that Solomon wrote this book of Ecclesiastes, and so he presents us with a very interesting dichotomy here between a live dog and a dead lion. It's almost as if he's asking, would you rather be a dog or a lion? Now, in the culture in which he was writing, the people that would have read this, they would have said, oh, I'd rather be a lion over a dog. Because in those days, even in New Testament times, to be called a dog was derogatory. People looked down on dogs. They didn't treat them the way we treat our pets, our dogs. Dogs in that culture were similar to rats in our culture. How many of you have a rat for a pet? I guess some people do, but nobody here, and I wouldn't do that. I mean, just the idea of seeing a rat in our house is like, we got to burn this house down, right? Like, we cannot have this, we cannot coexist with a rat. The only time I've ever sort of enjoyed seeing a rat was when I was with Ryan waiting for a subway in New York City, and I saw a rat running across. But it was down in the rail area. But we don't appreciate rats, and people in Bible times didn't appreciate dogs. But to be called a lion, that was different. That was a great compliment, because a lion was majestic. A lion was honorable. So two very different views. So I'd rather be a lion than a dog, when you compare them in Bible times. But the question is not so much, would you rather be a lion or a dog? But the question that Solomon asked is, would you rather be a live dog or a dead lion? Well, you know what? I guess I'd rather be a live dog, because there's hope in life. As long as there's life, there's hope. Right? That's what he says. As long as there's life, there's hope. I'd rather be a lion, but not a dead one. I'd rather not be a dog, but unless he's alive and the lion's dead, I'd rather be a live dog. And so that's what he's talking about. Very interesting comparison that he makes here. So why is that the case? Well, let's talk about hope. What is hope? Hope is the expectation that something which has been desired, or something that is desired or that has been promised, will be fulfilled. Hope is an expectation that something that we desire or that someone has promised us will be fulfilled. Hope. We all need hope. We need hope. Without hope, our lives become characterized by increasing darkness. A lack of hope means a lack of a vision for our lives. Instead of the joy-filled life that God has for us, we give in to fear and to despair and anxiety. Instead of the abundant life that Jesus died to give us, then we surrender to darkness and despondency. So let me give you just a couple of things that a lack of hope does in our lives. First of all, a lack of hope makes us think that God has abandoned us. If we live a life without hope, even if we live a few days without hope, eventually we're going to land at the feeling that God has left me. God who once loved me no longer loves me. God who was once there with me is no longer there with me. He has abandoned me. Even David, a man after God's own heart, thought this. In Psalm 22:1, He says this, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? Now, David knew better. He had already seen God's faithfulness. He had written songs about God's faithfulness. But isn't it interesting that when we go through valleys, it's easy to give in to fear and to lose our hope. Where we once had hope, suddenly we're despondent. Suddenly we lose this expectation that God is going to answer us. And this plays right into Satan's hands because he wants nothing more than for us to think that God has abandoned us. That's exactly what he wants. So a lack of hope makes us think that God has abandoned us. Secondly, a lack of hope makes us I'm sorry, I said it wrong. A lack of hope may cause us to hope for life to end. A lack of hope may cause us to long for life to end. This happened to one of the greatest Old Testament prophets, a man by the name of Elijah. Powerful prophet who at one time took on 850 prophets at one time. 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. The prophets of the wicked queen Jezebel. He challenged them to a contest to determine who was the real God, Baal or Asherah or God, Jehovah God. And they had this great contest. We read about this in 1 Kings 19. And the contest was, we're going to pray to our gods, and whoever answers by fire, by sending fire, that's a true God. Well, we know how that ends. We know that the false prophets prayed and prayed all day, and they cut themselves, and they just, while Elijah mocked them, he mocked them and he mocked their God, they kept praying and nothing happened. Then when Elijah prayed, even after he stacked the cards against himself, by having men dig a trench around the altar and pour water into that trench and cover the sacrifice and do it again. Even with all that, when he prayed a simple prayer, God sent down fire, and he won that. He won that, and it killed the prophets. And then Jezebel, because these were her prophets, Jezebel heard about it, and she sent word to Elijah and basically said to him, I'm going to do to you what you did to my prophets. And here's what Elijah, this powerful man, here's what he did in 1 Kings 19. Look at verse 3. We read that Elijah, when he heard these words, this message, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Are you kidding, Elijah? You're the one who just stood up to these 850 prophets and the wicked queen, but then she sends a message. Now, she wasn't going to kill him. If she really wanted to kill him, she wouldn't have sent a messenger. She would have sent an assassin, somebody to kill him. But he says, I've had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Now, what's going on here? What's going on here is that Elijah has lost his perspective. And in losing his perspective, he lost his hope in God. That's what happens when we lose our perspective and we say, oh, it's so bad. It's so terrible. It's awful. And that caused him to want to give up on life itself because he saw life. He saw life as being worse than it really was. Things weren't as bad as he thought they were. But that's exactly what a lack of hope does. It makes you think that things are worse than they are, and sometimes may even cause you to long for life to end. And I'm not necessarily talking about wanting to end our own life, although that might also be possible when there's no hope. But I'm talking about simply a desire for life to stop so the pain will stop. For life to end so the pain in my life will end. Those are some of the things that happen when we don't have hope. Because we need hope. We all need hope, young and old. But oh, what a difference when our hope in God is intact. Because hope gives us assurance, it gives us confidence. Hope removes the fear and the despair. So let me give you some things that hope does. Some things that hope does in our lives to heal our souls, to strengthen our souls, to give us joy, happiness, health, strength. Here's what hope does. Number one, hope strengthens our faith. Hope strengthens our faith. Hebrews 11:1 says this, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Hope is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Now, in this whole chapter, this entire chapter 11 of Hebrews, the writer is writing about some of the great men and women who accomplished great things for God. And he goes through his long list of men and women who did great things through faith. And when he gets to the end of the list, here's the way he finishes up this chapter, this section. He finishes up by saying, I don't have time to tell you about everybody else. He says, like in Hebrews 11:33, we don't have a slide for this, but he says, I don't have time to tell you about everybody who through faith, here's what they did. They conquered kingdoms, administered justice, gained what was promised. They shut the mouths of lions. They quenched the fury of the flames and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength and who became powerful in battle, and they routed foreign armies. Then he says, women received back their dead. They received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so they might gain an even better resurrection. And when I read these verses, when I read these words, I think I want to have that kind of faith, a faith that moves mountains. Did you hear some of those things? Quenching the fury of flames, receiving back their dead, routing foreign armies. How can I have that kind of faith? Well, the answer is in verse 1, which tells us that the basis of our faith is our hope in God. That's a basis of our faith, our hope in God. When we maintain hope in God, it strengthens our faith. In the previous chapter, Hebrews 10:23, the writer writes this, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. So the writer is talking about how we can persevere, and he says, you persevere by holding on to hope. Holding on to hope. And we can hold on to hope because we know that God is faithful. God is faithful. Hope strengthens our faith. Secondly, hope allows us to face suffering with confidence. Hope allows us to face suffering with confidence. You see, I gave you a definition of hope at the beginning. It's expectation that those things that are desired of us or that someone has promised to us will come to pass. But biblical hope is a belief that God's children will experience the fullness of God's goodness. But it also includes, biblical hope, when you read about it in the New Testament especially, but even the Old, includes this recognition that for us, we believe that we're going to experience the fullness of God's goodness, but we also know that we'll have to learn to wait on the Lord. Learn to trust, wait patiently for God to answer, because the answer doesn't always come immediately. And so, hope allows us to face suffering with confidence even when the answer doesn't come immediately. Paul wrote to the Romans in Romans 5:3 and 4, and he wrote this, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings. That is to say, we boast in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. So it starts with suffering and it ends with hope, but it takes perseverance and it takes building of character before we get to hope. We're all going to suffer. We're all going to suffer. I have a memory in my mind of when I was just a little boy, and it's one of my earliest memories. I don't know, I must have been 5 or 6, I guess. I don't know. We were living in the Rio Grande Valley, the town or the city of San Benito, where I was born when my dad was a pastor. And I remember it was after a church service on a Sunday. We were outside, and I was hanging out with two older boys, and we're standing next to a car. And these two boys, they might have been teenagers. I don't know. To me, they were really old and men of the world, but they were kids because I remember that they saw a bug, and I don't know if they stepped on it or something. Then they put the bug on the hood of the car that we were next to, and they're watching this bug, and I'm watching the bug with them. And one of them said to the other one, "Oh, it looks like he's really suffering." The bug was squirming; it wasn't dead yet. He said, "It looks like he's really suffering." And I remember this clearly. I asked them, I don't know if they answered me, but I asked them, "What's suffering?" I was a little kid. I mean, I didn't know what that meant. What's suffering? Again, I don't remember their answer, if they really even answered, but I can tell you I know what it is now. And you do too. We've been there. We've suffered things that no one should deal with. Losses, broken hearts. Suffering is going to happen. It's going to happen. But hope allows us to face suffering with confidence. With confidence. That's what hope does. I love what I read many years ago by a man named Henry Ward Beecher. Henry Ward Beecher. His sister was Harriet Beecher. Some of you, if you remember your literature, you might know something famous that she wrote. But Henry Ward Beecher once said this. He said, "Every tomorrow has two handles. Every tomorrow has two handles. We can take hold of it with a handle of anxiety or the handle of faith. Your choice. Your choice. Tomorrow has two handles. Which handle are you going to take hold of it? Anxiety or faith? If you choose faith, then you're choosing hope. The confidence we have is that we're never alone and that God's purposes will give meaning to our life. What else does hope do for us? Well, hope allows us to live joyfully. To live joyfully. Romans 12:12 says this, "Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer." Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction. We just talked about that. And faithful in prayer. So hope means that we're expecting an answer, but that answer hasn't come yet. That's really what hope is. So what do you do while you wait? What do you do while you wait? The waiting, Tom Petty sang, if you're a fan of Tom Petty, the waiting is the hardest part. That's the hardest part. It's true. So what do? I mean, you can gripe and complain, or you can rejoice, or you can be joyful. You can celebrate life. You can rejoice in hope when your hope is in God. We don't have to wait for the answer to start rejoicing. In fact, anybody can rejoice after the answer comes. Only people whose hope is really in God will rejoice before the answer comes. When the children were waiting to be delivered from Pharaoh's army, and they were at the shore of the Red Sea, and they're panicking and they're angry. They're blaming God and they're blaming Moses. But then God delivers them. They walk through the Red Sea on dry ground. God kills the army that was after them. And once they're on the other side, oh sure, then the singers come out. Then the tambourines come out. Everybody rejoices. And that's good. We should be thankful. But you know what's really meaningful? When we can rejoice before the answer arrives. Anybody can rejoice. Anybody can praise after the answer has arrived. What about before? Rejoicing is how God wants us to live at all times. As long as there is life, right, there is hope. Ecclesiastes 9:4. As long as there's life, there's hope. As long as there's hope, enjoy life. Rejoice in the goodness of God. As long as there is hope, we can enjoy life to the fullest. Let me tell you, that's what God wants for you. So let's go back to our beginning text as we turn a corner and get ready to finish here. Because Solomon has a lot to say about living and dying. If you read this book of Ecclesiastes and even the book of Proverbs. He has a lot to say about living and dying. And so we read Ecclesiastes 9:4. Here's Ecclesiastes 9:5 and 6. He writes this, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun." Boy, that Solomon, he sure knows how to encourage us, huh? You're going to die and you know it. Okay, thank you, Solomon. The dead are gone, he's saying, and the living know that they're going to be dead someday. They'll be gone also. You know, it sounds kind of hopeless, but I really think what Solomon is trying to do here is he's trying to give us the right perspective. He's trying to sober us up a little bit, give us the right perspective. And the right perspective is this. The right perspective is this. If you're always thinking about how you're going to die someday, people are going to forget about you. If you're always thinking that, you're going to live miserably. You're going to live miserably. You're always going to wonder, is that all there is to this life? I mean, that we're born to die? You know, let me tell you, that's a terrible way to live. To always be thinking, oh, I'm going to be dead. People will forget about me. And because you're thinking that, you never enjoy life. So Solomon says, look, there's a better way to live here. There's a better way to live. Solomon is saying, God has another path for you. And he gives us that path in verse 7. In verse 7, you ready for this? Here's what Solomon says. He says, don't live, just this miserable mindset, just thinking about how you're going to die. In verse 7, he says, live this way. Go eat. Go eat. That's what he says. Look at verse 7. So he says, so go ahead. Eat your food with joy and drink your wine with a happy heart, for God approves of this. And I'm reading now from the New Living Translation. For God approves of this. You've been approved for this already. He says, eat your food with joy, drink your wine with a happy heart, for God approves of this. Wear fine clothes. Yeah, ladies, go shopping. Right? Wear fine clothes with a splash of cologne. I was thinking the other day, just recently, I haven't worn cologne since about the early 90s. I don't know why. I used to wear it. I just wanted to smell good. Now I don't care how I smell. I don't know what that says about me, but maybe I need to get back to that. But he's saying, while you're alive, here's what he says, eat. Eat good food. Eat good things. And by the way, don't get hung up on the wine part. He's just saying, eat good food and drink good drinks. Right? My wife and I love to eat at Armenta's. And now I know it's biblical. I'm obeying God. And some of you know that we love to go out to eat because for our 40th anniversary, we got some wonderful gifts from all of you. Thank you so much, including several of you that gave us some gift cards to go out to eat. And we're still using them. But it's biblical. You should enjoy good food. And then he tells us how to eat our food. He says, go eat your food with gladness, with joy. Be happy. Get your friends together and eat together. And you say, yeah, but I'm going to die someday. Well, that's right. So you better enjoy your relationships as quickly as you can. I mean, if you and I knew the day we were going to die, then the days before that, how would we spend our time? Would we spend it by being bitter and angry and frustrated? Or would we spend it having meals with people we love? We would spend it having meals with people we love. So he's saying, as long as you're alive, go eat your food with gladness. Get the people you love together. I heard a preacher say this one time. He says, barbecue. He said, get a dead animal and lay it on the grill and worship the Lord. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Go eat your food with gladness. Ecclesiastes 10:19 says that a feast is made for laughter, that you should get together with your friends and eat something and enjoy one another's company. Later on, he says, enjoy your wife. We're not going to get into that right now, but he says, enjoy your wife. He says, enjoy your relationships. Love, laugh, eat. What I'm saying to you is, be the kind of person that enjoys life. Be the kind of person that enjoys your days, because a live dog is better than a dead lion. Living beats dying when you know how to enjoy life, when your soul is content, when your soul is happy, when your soul is joyful, and when your soul is healthy. Let me finish with this. There's only one way to really enjoy life, and that's really kind of been the undercurrent of what I've been sharing with you today. The only way to really enjoy life is to surrender your life completely to God, to receive Him as your Lord and your Savior, and to commit to serving Him and just following Him all the days of your life. I'm talking about having an experience with God where He forgives your past and He changes your future, where He makes you a new person. So turn to God today. If you've never crossed that line of faith, whether you're here today or you're watching online, you've never made a decision to say, from this day forward, I give my life to God. I surrender my all to God. I give my heart, my emotions, everything to God. And allow Him to touch you. It's a decision you make, but it's also uh, a transformation that He brings about in your heart. Then today I encourage you to do that. Turn to God, because the true power of hope is found in God. The true healing of our souls is found in God, not in ourselves. And so let's turn to Him today. I want your souls to be healthy and enjoy life. Not bitter, but healthy. I want you to enjoy your relationships, because a live dog is better than a dead lion. So let's turn to God today. Would you bow for prayer? Father, we're so thankful that we don't have to live life on our own. Lord, I'm thankful that you have created a way for us to be filled with joy. Even when we suffer, you've created a way for our souls to be healthy, our emotions to be healthy, for us to smile again. I know there are people that are listening to this and watching this that maybe have asked themselves, will I ever smile again? Will my soul ever be healed? Will I ever be filled with hope again? And the answer is yes, God. But that hope is found only in you. So today, dear God, we turn to you. Today we ask you, help us to trust in you. Today we ask you, heal our hearts, broken hearts. Heal our souls. Sometimes we can become cynical. Heal us from that cynicism. Sometimes we can become bitter and angry and frustrated. Heal us from that, God. Help us to enjoy life with a hope that is founded in you alone. Help us to enjoy life. We turn to you, Father.